Hi guys, welcome to Chapter 11. What we're going to talk about are public goods, goods that we can use without having to pay for them. And we're going to notice that it actually has a problem, just very much like externalities like we learned about last chapter. The marketplace actually can't allocate the resources well. And we have what's called market failure. Just like we had last chapter with externalities, we have market failure with goods that everybody can use. All right? And so we're going to once again rely on the idea that sometimes the governments can improve the market outcomes, but only when there's a market failure. So let's look at this market failure just a little bit more. Okay, so a good is excludable if a person can be prevented from using it. Excludable things are what you mostly think of as goods, right? Fish tacos, anything that you purchase, wireless internet access, you can put a password on. But if something that is not excludable means anyone can use this good, and FM radio signal is a really good example. You can't stop anyone from tuning in. And here's another definition, okay? Rival in consumption if one person's use of it diminishes the other's use. So a firm can be both of these at the same time. I'm going to give you some examples. A rival is a fish taco, right? If you eat a fish taco, I can no longer eat that fish taco. So a fish taco is both excludable, meaning you can prevent me from it, and rival. But if I do end up eating it, you can't eat it. But then, of course, there's not rival and download from the internet, right? If I download this song, you can still go down and download it. It's not like eating a fish taco. All right, so there's actually 4 different kind of goods. I'll throw them up here. Now, there's a private good. This is what you think of your average good, food. It's both excludable and rival in consumption. Public good is not excludable, but it is also not rival. So national defense. Just because I'm here being defended by my nation does not enable you to be defended any less. There's this idea that it's a common resource. It's similar to a public good in that it's not excludable, but if you use it up, then it uses it up for me. So an example is fish in the ocean. We can't keep each other from catching fish, but if you catch that fish, unlike national defense, if you use it up, then I can't use it anymore. And then there's these things called club goods, because of so-called the country club good. It's excludable, but it's not rival, right? So I can keep you out of that country club, or I can keep you out of watching cable TV, but if you do watch it, it doesn't affect my consumption of it. Therefore, it's not rival. Okay, so let's think about roads right now. Which one of these is a road? Okay, is it a public good, a common resource, a club good, or a private good? And I'll give you a little hint. So go ahead and pause and think about this for a couple seconds. All right, let's look at it. Here's a very interesting thing. Is it rival? Well, if the road is an empty road, then you getting on does not hurt my consumption of the road at all. However, if there's traffic, like the 405 in rush hour, then it is rival, okay? Is it excludable? Well, most roads are not excludable, but toll roads are, right? We can keep people off unless they pay a toll. So there's actually 4 possibilities. If I have an uncongested, non-toll road, just like a regular road, this would actually be considered a public good. If I have an uncongested toll road, like the 73 that's in Southern California, it's never crowded, that would be a club good. If I have a congested, non-toll road, like the 405 in Southern California, this would be a common resource. And if I have a congested toll road, this is kind of like a private good. All right, so it's just a way to get you thinking about the different types of goods. Okay, so we're going to talk about public goods and common resources because they both have this problem that they're non-excludable, right? We can't prevent people from using public goods and common resources. And because they're non-excludable, we have externalities arise because there's no price attached to it, because there's no way to keep people away and make them pay a price so they can use it for free. Okay, so the private decisions lead to inefficient outcomes, but public policy on the part of the government can raise economic well-being. Let's look at it. Let's talk about public goods a little bit. We have this issue called the free rider problem. Okay, it's a person who receives the benefit of the good but doesn't want to pay for it. Okay, if a good's not excludable, then people have the incentive to be free riders because I can go in and get the benefit of the good, but you can't stop me from using this good. I think we see this very often in that perhaps you even do this. You want to go buy something that's an electronic TV perhaps. You go look at Best Buy. You get all the information from looking at the right TV, make the decision on the TV that you want to buy, and then you go home and you buy it on Amazon.com. They can't prevent you from consuming this information in their store. And so what ends up happening is the goods are not produced. Perhaps Best Buy starts thinking, well, I actually don't want to allow have highly trained salespeople on the floor. So they might start pulling back their salespeople. The good is not produced, even if it's actually better off to society than the cost of providing it. Okay? So if the benefit of the public good exceeds the cost of providing it, the government should just go ahead and provide the good and then force everybody to pay with a tax, right? If you force people to pay with a tax, it eliminates the free rider problem because people have to pay. Think of a park, for example, a big open park. It's good for society, but everybody just kind of wants to use it and not have to pay for it. The problem, though, how do you exactly know how much benefit a park is to society? Well, you can do this thing called cost-benefit analysis. It compares the costs and the benefits of this good. The problem is that it's really hard to measure exactly how much good, quote, good, a park does for society. Okay, so let's think of some important public goods. There's national defense, knowledge created through basic research, right? If a firm invents a new, perhaps cancer drug, then it can trickle down and help a bunch of other people, and we want that. Also, getting rid of poverty. Okay, now let's talk about common resources, the other type of good that we're going to talk about. First there was public goods, now it's common resources. So these are not excludable. They have that same problem that free riders come in, and nobody wants to make this good because you can't get paid. And so there's definitely a role for the government here in coordinating. And there's an even worse problem with common resources. So you have all the problems with public resources, but on top of it, with common resources, they're rival, meaning if you use it up, then I cannot use it anymore. So each person's reduce is going to make me not be able to use it, and now the government has to both provide it and kind of regulate this thing. So the tragedy of the commons is a parable that illustrates why common resources get used more than socially desirable. It's a tragedy, you see. Okay, so imagine a medieval town, and sheep are grazing on the common land in the middle. Maybe it's kind of like a little park place. All right, so as the population grows, the number of sheep are growing, the amount of land in the middle is fixed. And so what happens as there's more and more sheep, the grass begins to disappear because everybody's eating, all the sheep are eating too much. And so really, we have a misalignment of incentives. Socially, what's best for society is to use it carefully, but everybody on an individual basis just wants to go out and use it as much as possible. And so eventually the grass dies and everybody's sheep die as well. Now, this is due to the externality, just like we learned about in last chapter. The fact when your sheep come out and graze on the land, it takes away the grass, and then my sheep cannot graze on that land. So it's a negative externality to me, and because this externality is not internalized, they overuse the land. So let's think, what could the townspeople or a government have done to prevent the tragedy? Okay, think of 2 or 3 options. Whoops. And click pause, write these down. Some of them are going to be really simple to come up with, and then come back. All right, so here's an idea. They could have imposed a corrective tax on the use of the land to internalize the externality. All right, they could have regulated use of the land. This is kind of like what we talked about, command and control. They could have auctioned off permits, just like the tradable pollution permits, or they could have divided the land, sell lots to individual families. They would have turned this common resource into a private good, actually, and then everybody's going to take care of it. So let's look at some real-life policy options that help the overconsumption of the common resources. Okay, first we see a lot of regulating. This happens, and then we have corrective taxes so that all of the bystanders can impose the cost upon the people who are consuming the good. So an example is the hunting and fishing licenses or entrance fees for congested national parks. All these options make the people who are consuming this common resource, the tourists or the hunters, to internalize the externality. auction off permits allowing use of the resource, we saw this exactly the same idea in the tradable pollution permits. And the way to think of it is the air is our common resource that we're utilizing and we're using it up, and the tradable pollution permits are a way to take care of that. Also, the radio waves are auctioned off as well, in much the same way by the FCC. Okay, and then finally, if it's land, you can go ahead and convert it to a private good like we had talked about last slide, and you can divide it and then you sell the pieces to individuals. If it's their own good, if it's a private good, people will use it efficiently. Okay, so here's some things that we classify as common resources that are really important. Clean air and water, congested roads, fish, whales, and other wildlife. Common resource economics deals in a large amount with both the environment and with especially fishing, because what has ended up happening is because there's no way to exclude people from the ocean, people are ending up overfishing all of species of fish. Okay, so here's another funny example, is spam. Not the kind you eat, the kind that you get in your email inbox. This is a common resource, okay? It's not excludable, and it is rival, right? As companies use more spam, it becomes less effective. Maybe perhaps the first guy who ever started spamming people, maybe it was really effective. Now it's not effective anymore because people don't even pay attention to it, all right? So spam is a common resource. What happens to common resources? They're overused, all right? And that's why we get so much of it in our email. It's kind of an interesting idea. All right, so finally, public goods and common resources both tend to be underprovided, but common resources also suffer from this additional problem that they're overconsumed, okay? Property rights are not well established. I can't keep you from using air. We get too much pollution. I can't keep you from receiving protection from the government, so there's too little defense, right? And the government, though, can potentially solve these problems with the appropriate policies that we've talked about.